When I was a school teacher, I used to tell all of my students that, politics, you might not care about politics, but politics certainly cares about you. And there's two versions of that word politics, right? One is this party politics that we all think of, that, politicians that we all dislike. And then the other part of politics is our energy bills or our property taxes, the potholes in our road. That is all politics as well. So, but I want to caveat before we go into this that there's none of the first politics in there. There's no campaigning or whatever. This is not based off of my opinion, but just based off of data, because I truly believe the more people know, the more the working people know about stuff, the more powerful we are as a group to fight back when people are taking advantage of us. And a lot of the times, the politicians will speak to us and say, well, things are complicated, or I'm going to do this, or we're trying to do this, because they're really hoping that people don't understand how the system works. And so that's what we're really going to talk about tonight, is basically how does the system work, and how can we, you know, how can we how can we rise up together and lower our energy costs, and what the future really does hold. If you're here because of this video, amazing things have happened. Since we posted this video, and only on one platform, this video got, like, I think on Instagram, it got almost 200,000 views, and that's only Instagram. That's not Facebook or TikTok or Reddit. If you're not here because of this video, that's why most people are here. We had 500 signups. Actually, we have like almost 700 or 800 signups. So tonight we're only doing this with 500 because that's where we're limited for in this space on Google Meets. So that means we're gonna have to have a second town hall. But anyway, so if you're here for this video, this is what happened. This video was posted on Thursday, February 26th, and this is what happened since Thursday. Ferguson seeks to ban data center at Baltimore Peninsula, increasing BGE scrutiny. And I want you to know that that wasn't me that has pushed this. It's because of you. If I would have just posted a video and nobody would have liked it or commented or even joined this this town hall tonight, nothing would have happened. But that video got so many views and became so popular that it actually pushed the politicians into doing something that they've been putting off for years, something that could have saved us hundreds and hundreds of dollars over the past few years. And this bill, this legislation that he's seeking to ban, well, the data center, the legislation that they intend to introduce on Friday, is something that advocates for ratepayers, for people like you and me, for working people, have been wanting for so long. So I just wanted to know that this isn't about me at all. This is like about us. Without you folks out there, I would have just been a guy posting the video. This is my follow-up video that I posted yesterday. It's only on Reddit, if you have access to that. But basically, Bill Ferguson has, over the course of several years, has taken about $58,950 from various utility companies or related companies. And so I did, in this follow-up post, when I was congratulating all of us for actually pushing the politicians to make change and to pass legislation that would protect us, I did ask him to return all of the money that he's taken from utility companies and related companies by this Monday at 9 a.m. because I truly believe you can't represent the people if you're also being paid by the utility companies. If you have your BGE bill handy, pull it out. This is ours. Note that it's only $226 because we are on budget billing. So this would have been $400 if we weren't on budget billing. And if you don't know what budget billing is, they take your average of how much you spend over a course of time and they charge you that. So basically, it's almost like a loan, because this is only showing $226, but we still owe BGE like $400 that we haven't paid, with the thought that over the course of several years, we'll be paying that down. So like if we would move to a new house, we would have to pay that off almost like a loan. And that's crazy. But the two things I want to point out on a bill are the two different parts, supply and delivery. As you can see, we'll just go do electricity, but it's both for electricity and gas. If you look at the top circle to the left, you'll see the BGE electric delivery in blue, and then you're going to see the electric supply from BGE in gray. And you can see that the largest amount of our costs for electricity is supply versus delivery. But let's go talk about what these two different things, or these things mean. All right. So when you think of supply, I tried to do this like I was going to teach a class with like, it's not overly complicated stuff, but try to make it more interesting than boring. But if we think of supply, just think of food. Think of these oranges and apples. Supply is where the energy is coming from, the power plant. So let's say the oranges are nuclear power. We've got the apples that are wind power. These baby carrots over here on the right, that could be coal, nasty coal. So think of that. When you think of supply, all right, so when you see those supply rates, think of it basically as how the power is getting made. Now, delivery is how we get the food home. Okay, so we go to the grocery store, we pick up the apples, we pick up the oranges, we put them in our car, put them in our car, take them on the bus. Maybe we have this food guy that delivers it. But basically, when we're talking about energy delivery, is your poles, your wires, your transformers, things like that. The stuff that actually brings the power into your house, or the food into your house. And as you can see, if you're in Maryland, one of these companies is delivering that power to you. One of those companies is the wires and the poles and the transformers. BGE, Pepco, BGE, most of us that's probably on this line right now is BGE, Pepco, Delmarva Power, or Potomac Edison. Is there something you all notice about BGE, Pepco, and Delmarva Power? Yes, they're all owned by Exelon. So when we talk about like a utility monopoly, like BGE, which basically has no competition within this area, just think of the larger scope of the state of Maryland in that monopoly when BGE, Pepco, and Delmarva Power are all owned by the same company. So once again, supply is the food. It's actually how the power is being made. Delivery is, again, the wires like BGE bringing the power into your home, right? We have like a supervisor of sorts called PJM interconnection, which supervises this entire grid. The grid or the regional grid that we're in is made up of 13 states. And there's a map right there. Now, obviously, you can see that Maryland is part of that. Now, in this regional grid, we all kind of cost share the supply of how energy is being made. If you think of PJM, going off of our food example, I want you to think of a supermarket, okay? So PJM is like the supermarket. The supermarket is the regional grid. And each aisle will represent one of these states or the District of Columbia. PJM is like the supermarket manager. PJM's goal every year is to make sure that we have enough power in the whole region, in the 13-state region, the entire grocery store, so our lights don't go out. And what they hold is a capacity auction. Now, in these capacity auctions, like you and I, let's think about you and I are going to go ahead and make dinner, right? We might just look in the fridge and say, okay, what do I have? What can I heat up in the microwave? What can I put on the stove? Or we might sit down and actually, make a list. So when PJM is going at this, PJM isn't just looking in the fridge to see what they can eat today. PJM is looking years down the road to try to project our energy needs in the future. When they go into the capacity auction, they go up to all of these different power plants, or let's say the growers of the fruit, and they say, listen, we might have a big demand on apples in the future. Can you go ahead and guarantee me that you're going to be able to grow enough apples 3 years from now? And based on how many apples can be grown, that auction that dictates the price of those apples in the auction. That's the supply. Okay. So PJM oversees the entire supermarket. They make sure that all the apples and the oranges are there and ordered for years in advance. And depending on how much demand you have for the apples and the oranges, basically how much demand you have for the energy, that dictates the supply cost. So now we've done supply and delivery. Let me get questions on supply and delivery.
What is the solar energy impact on the supply?
Let's get to that to the end for renewable energies, because I have a whole section on renewable energies. But If you look at the entire region, just right off the cuff, real quick, just give you a quick example. There's more than 200 gigawatts worth of renewable energy that's waiting on this grid, on this entire 13 state region. That's actually waiting in line to be approved to be plugged in, which is a very long process, and we're going to get into that. Going on? Let me go on. Okay. All right. So what has happened now with EVs, with AI, with data centers? Those supply rates have skyrocketed because the demand is so high and there just aren't enough apples. There just are not enough energy producers. And you can see by this graph, you can look at 2017, 18, you can see how the energy supply has been pretty, or the supply cost has been pretty steady until when you see here in 24, you see them skyrocket. And they skyrocketed, if you look at this, BGE, that light blue is basically for the entire region, a 13 state region. You see this red triangle, that's Northern Virginia, Dominion, and you see this big dot, 466. So basically it's $466 per megawatt per day. 1 megawatt roughly can power like 800 to 900 homes per day. Okay. So before it was $28.92 per megawatt per day. Now it's 466 based off of a huge demand and also a loss of energy producers locally in our area, specifically the two coal burning plants like Brandon Shores, which, by the way, coal is a horrible thing, but they were supposed to close this May, but now they're not going to be closing until May of 2029. So our costs should come down a little bit considering that, but that's where the supply cost comes. So when you look at your bill and you see that huge gray circle, that huge thing of supply, that's because there's such a huge demand of supply. Sorry, such a huge demand for energy, but there's just not enough to actually supply those demands. So the higher the demand and the less the supply, the higher the price goes up. And we'll talk in the end about ways how to fix that. But so that's it. So when we're wondering why is our bill so high because of supply, that's what it is. That's how supply works. The bills are so high because of the intense demand on energy, and we just don't have enough energy producers on the grid right now to actually keep the cost low. Okay, so moving on. So delivery. Okay, so now we know the cost of that gray circle, that half gray circle, about why supply is so high. Now let's go to delivery. Okay, so delivery is normally investor-owned utilities like BGE. Okay, they earn profits on building new infrastructure, and they don't make profits on supply. That is super, super important, okay? So your delivery, that's going to be your Pepcos, your BGEs, your Delmarva Power, your Potomac Edisons. They're not beholden to us, the ratepayers. They're beholden to their shareholders, okay? And now there's Exelon Corp. This is their current price per share. They have to make sure they make a profit for their investors, the investors who are buying their stock in Exelon Corp. You see this dip right here in 23, 24. That is actually when they split up and created a new company called Constellation Energy, which is separately traded in the stock market. Constellation is the supply. They own energy making things like power plants and stuff like that. They're like a supplier now. And BGE, Pepco, Delmarva Power, these are all just delivery people, the ones that run, again, the poles, the wires, bring the energy into your house. Now, the thing is, they don't make money. They don't make a profit if they're just maintaining the system. If they just go in and make sure all the stuff works, they only make a profit on new infrastructure. So every new project that they do, every new building is when they're guaranteed a profit by the state of Maryland. I believe it's 9.5% right now, in order to go ahead and recoup that. Now, as you've seen from my last videos, I don't have a slide here, but in the last 2 years, BGE has had record profits over $500 million. And we're going to go into exactly how they have made that large profit with a little scheme that they do. So first of all, before we get into the scheme about the big profits, this is how it used to work. This is how BGE bills us. So there's this organization called the Maryland Public Service Commission. Okay, it's a panel that is appointed by the governor of Maryland and then confirmed by the state senate. They are supposed to regulate all these utility companies. They make all the rules about what can be built, what shouldn't be built, how much BGE is owed for building things. Right now, we're in this thing called a multi-year rate plan. We've been on that for 3 years prior to this, and they just renewed another 3-year multi-rate plan. So it runs in 3-year increments. We've done one already. You've seen what that's done to our rates. And now we're on the second one. Prior to this, BGE could go to the PSC, get approval for something, they would build it, and then they would come back and they would recover their costs, basically show their receipts. The PSC would look at it to make sure all the stuff was done per what they agreed to, and then pay BGE for the services. What they're doing right now under the multi-year rate plan is they are allowed to pre-charge us, the ratepayers, for projects they haven't even started yet, based on projections for the future. So that is why our when it comes to delivery rates, why they have just exploded upwards, and why BGE has also made extraordinary profit over the years. And then at the end of it, this is prior to this year. Once BGE is done with this 3-year multi-year rate plan, if they overspent for any of their projects, they could come back to the PSC and try to get money back for what they overspent. So basically, I do this analogy as the plumber. Okay, let's say your toilet's clogged or whatever, you've got a pipe. At some point, we probably all have hired a plumber. Well, when you call the plumber comes in, he says, "What's the problem?" And you're like, "Oh, well, this thing is leaking or whatever." The plumber looks at it real quickly and gives you an estimate on how much it's going to cost to fix it. You decide if you want to fix it or not. If you decide yes, the plumber does the job, and then you pay the plumber when the job is done. That's kind of how it used to work with BGE when they were building their new projects of which is the only way they can make a profit. Now, under a multi-year rate plan, the plumber comes into your house, just starts fixing stuff. You might not even have to be home. And then in the end of it, they just start sending you bills for all the stuff that they're doing. It really limits the amount of accountability that the PSC could have on BGE, because they're out there willy-nilly doing projects. Then after the project is done, let's say you even told the plumber, "Oh, just do whatever you can for $100. All right, no problem. I can do whatever I can for $100. Then the plumber comes back after the job is done and says, "You know what? It was actually 150. So now you got to cough up $50. This literally happened just a few months ago, where they went over budget. I think it was more than 150 million. It might have been 152 million. But in the end, the PSC was like, "No, we're not going to pay all that." And they settled for 70 some million dollars. But remember, this 70 some million dollars coming from the PSC, that's our tax money. We pay that in taxes. So first, we're paying rates to BGE to do all of their projects and to make a profit off those projects. And then when they overspent, they could come back to the state and get more money. And that is coming from us too, the ratepayers, through the form of taxes. So in the end of the day, the General Assembly actually passed a law, which they should have years ago. And this is the point about, hindsight isn't 2020 in this, because other states have been here. Other states have had these problems. I just don't understand why the politicians dropped the ball, but years later, like a day late, dollar short, they pass a law saying, "Listen, BGE, when you tell us it's going to be this much money over 3 years to do your projects, you can't come back and ask for more money in the end." I mean, that makes sense. That's business 101 for anyone that owns like a small business out there or whatever. But it just took them 3 years of a multi-rate plan, even knowing that other states have already been through this and realized that this was a problem. It took our legislature years to actually close that little loophole or end that problem. And here's the BGE profit game. This is how their rates have skyrocketed, or why their profit has skyrocketed so much. And this is the important part. Okay, so there's two types of projects: baseline projects right here and supplemental projects. This is actually the bill that we forced Bill Ferguson to introduce this Friday, is actually going to be dealing with this supplemental project process. This is amazing because I'm just so excited about what we all did, because literally for years, organizations have been saying you need to stop this, and it hasn't come to fruition until we made that video. But basically, what a baseline project is, this is a project that PJM, remember, the grocery store manager, requires have to be done. PJM is like, the grid could fail, there could be blackouts if you don't do this project. That is a baseline project required by PJM, and that cost is shared by the whole region, all of these 13 jurisdictions, to include the District of Columbia. So that might just be increments in like change or dollar bills across every single ratepayer's portfolio. I believe it's 65 million people that PJM, it's either 65 or 67 million that they cover for PJM's region. So basically, all of those people will go ahead and share the cost of a baseline project. Now, here's supplemental projects. It's called FERC 1000. We don't have to get into the details so much. I don't want to get into the details. But basically, there's this federal requirement that says local utilities, if they see a problem, they could go ahead and fix that problem, just on their own. It's a supplemental project. A supplemental project doesn't have to go through PSC oversight, although advocates have been asking for it to go through some sort of oversight for years. Other states already have it going through oversight. BGE basically can make their own decision if they have to do a supplemental project. And then in the end of the day, that cost is shared locally, just with these people who are BGE customers. So that $500 million, that $500 million project that they were doing at Baltimore Peninsula, the cost of that project is not shared by the whole PJM grid, because PJM didn't see it as a requirement. It's only shared by us here in Maryland, the BGE ratepayers. So even if you're down here in Prince George's County or Howard County or Carroll County or Harford County, Baltimore County, when BGE is doing that service in Baltimore Peninsula, down here in Baltimore City, everyone in the BGE electricity region is paying for that project. It's a supplemental project. It falls under a federal loophole. And here's the biggest loophole. Basically, in that project, what the state of Maryland allows is, if it's existing wires underground, BGE doesn't have to come for approval to the PSC for that supplemental project. So all of these little projects that BGE has started all across our local region in Maryland has all been underground lines, because it bypasses the whole review process of the PSC and really undermines any kind of regulatory authority. So in the end of the day, what you and I have done with that video, you guys liking it and sharing it and even being on this town hall tonight, we have pushed the General Assembly to go ahead and actually pass a law that's going to address these supplemental projects that really are one of the biggest pushers of our rates going up. Now, it's not to say, I want to be very clear, it's not to say that everything BGE does is just for the golden goose. We do have an aging infrastructure that does have to be replaced. But adding $600 million 600 megawatts worth of power in the Baltimore Peninsula was definitely a golden goose type of project. It's something that started off as $100 million and ended at $500 million. And I bet you, to the end of this day, if we would pull BGE's profit after Q4, February of next year, I bet you their profits are higher than the last year's. And that has been a thing with their net profits have gone up every single year. So now let's talk about the data centers and why these projects are so important. Actually, let's take a pause. Let me take a question because I've just been talking a lot for 30 minutes. I'm sure there's somebody with a question. Is there a question that relates to anything that I just covered? So Sarah says, is BGE supplemental project the reason why there's been underground road work in Canton for this last year? I don't know. And that is another problem with supplemental projects. BGE literally, the utility company themselves, can literally approve these projects as long as it's basically underground lines. So it's actually really hard to go ahead and see exactly what projects they have. In fact, before I go to data centers, how can I share? No? Okay, don't do that. Okay. There's an organization called the Office of People's Counsel. So you have the PSC, which basically deals with, and this is still to Sarah's question. You have the PSC, which deals with oversight of the utility company. Well, then you have this beloved organization that nobody knows about and has been recently severely underfunded and understaffed called the Office of People's Counsel. They're our friends. They're the people that sue BGE, that ask questions of the PSC to basically represent the ratepayer. Now, they have been trying, as best they can to try to figure out where all these projects are popping up throughout the state of Maryland with BGE, these supplemental projects. And the answer is BGE isn't very forthcoming with a lot of this information. It's hard to see a lot of things. Do I see publicly owned? Okay, moving on. Are these BGE projects benefiting us in any way? Yes. So Morgan Carroll, are these BGE projects benefiting us in any way? We do have an aging infrastructure that we do need to go ahead and build out. We also aren't producing enough of our own energy in Maryland. So a lot of the grid work will have to be done to go ahead and change the wire sides. Let me go back. So different type of power plants produce different levels of power, which makes the wiring that's needed to deliver that power different sizes sometimes. So moving forward to maybe a renewable energy from coal energy would require an infrastructure built in that can accommodate the new wiring for that new energy source. So a lot of the projects do benefit us, but specifically about a lot of this huge profits that BGE has been making over the years is because of these golden goose supplemental things that they try to hide from the state of Maryland because there weren't adequate laws that were passed to prevent them from doing so. Speaking of aging infrastructure, I understand the city needs maintenance. How can we hold BGE accountable when they rip up the roads but not patch them properly? That is a huge problem when they don't patch the roads up properly. Baltimore City actually owns its conduit, and BGE rents that conduit from Baltimore City. The city council could pass legislation, if they haven't already, that mandates that BGE actually repair it the way it was. I'm assuming that law, I don't know, I'm assuming that law does exist, but really, when BGE tears up city roads and it's going through city conduit, really it should be the city that ensures that BGE repair the roads properly. Morgan Carroll, trying to take two more questions. Okay, Colin Hobby. Here's Colin Hobby, because I promised to get back to you. The problem is the Public Service Commission has never, so many questions coming in so quickly. The problem is the Public Service Commission has never had the public's interest at heart. How can we rectify the commission to be equitable to the public? That, Colin, is an amazing question. And it goes back into this thing, the Office of the People's Counsel. Going into the Office of the People's Counsel, they're literally the people who are trying to advocate for us. But there are certain laws that also have to be passed, like these restrictions on these supplemental projects. We should be able to have strict environmental regulations that go along with that. All of these projects need a thing called a certificate of public convenience, and necessity. So basically, before they can start tearing up roads and things like that, they have to get the certificate. By having the right laws in place, laws that the Office of People's Counsel have been advocating for since I believe 2022, years ago. They've been saying you need to close this loophole like every other state because they're just going to keep building supplemental stuff. If it's about the laws we can pass, Colin, that will actually hold the PSC accountable. Like, for example, the General Assembly could easily pass a law that ends multi-year rate plans, like almost every other state has done, because they just don't work, and it's really hard to hold our utilities accountable. But they haven't done that. And these are things that we're actually talking about as we get further down the line. And then let me get one more question. Um, okay, are there hydraulic? What about the federal government to allow for companies to create their own electrical systems? Hey, Michael, can you ask that question in a different way? I don't quite understand what you're asking. Um, oh yeah, Michael Helm. Michael Helm, can you send all of your questions to what email? AR at Bobby for Bmore, BMORE.com. Just ask that question in a different way. What about the federal government to allow for companies to create their own electrical systems? Just can you ask that, rephrase that for me, and I'll answer that the best I can. Okay, so now let's move on to data centers, okay? Because these are like the bane of my existence here. So this right here is a picture, data centers. Real quick, if you don't know what a data center is, there's really generally two types really of data centers that are really big in this area: cloud-based and then AI data centers. Cloud-based, like if you have an iPhone or a phone and you send pictures and it saves to the cloud, that's what cloud-based is. We run off of a Google platform for this campaign and actually for my boat business. So all that Google Suite stuff is held somewhere in a cloud database. It takes a lot less power and water and so on and so forth than an AI data center. Now, in an AI data center, is your chat GPTs or your Geminis. That takes a considerable amount of power to go ahead and generate answers for you in Google, or to figure out complicated math problems and things like that. We all know AI and stuff. We all know what it is. Well, all those things live in servers in these data centers. But this right here is Loudoun County. Look how close it is to these homes. This is an actual aerial picture in Loudoun County, Virginia, in Northern Virginia. This is an aerial map of where the data centers in Loudoun County are. Look at that. Look at all those data centers. It's called Data Center Row. Loudoun County, Virginia is like the capital of data centers in the entire world. Like off the cuff, they have over 213 data centers. Some of them are still being built. Some of them have been built and are offline, waiting for more power. That's the Piedmont project coming through Maryland, because literally this is where it's all going. A lot of the grid infrastructure that is happening throughout the entire region. So when we go back to that, to the PJM regional grid, you know, there's 13 states, a lot of the power, a lot of the supply costs in that are because data centers are using so much power. Some data centers, remember we said that a megawatt, 1 megawatt worth of power can power about 800 to 900 homes per day, okay? Some of these data centers take 100 megawatts just to turn the lights on and keep running per day. That is how just energy gobbling these data centers are. Loudoun County built them willy-nilly, but when Loudoun County actually built these data centers, they did something very different than what Maryland is doing. For example, Loudoun County, Virginia, which is Loudoun County, Virginia, rather than just taxing the data centers on the land that they sit on, and this is like genius on their part, rather than just taxing the data centers on the land that they sit on, Loudoun County taxes each individual server as property through a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. They bring in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars each year in Loudoun County. One projection I saw one year was they brought in $1.3 billion in taxes on data centers alone, which accounted for 74% of the county's operating budget. And although Loudoun County is beautiful, they have very wealthy homes and things like that, Loudoun County has now surpassed Montgomery County for having the best school system in the country. all brand new schools, fully funded education program, well-paid teachers, all from data center taxes. They also have the lowest property tax of any jurisdiction in the United States. And this is why states like Maryland and Pennsylvania and Delaware and West Virginia are begging to have data centers built in our state because they see this revenue and they believe this revenue would be so good to try to lower some of our costs. But in the end, that's not actually accurate. There are a couple of fallacies about data centers. First thing is it creates jobs. Data centers do create jobs temporarily, temporary construction jobs. Excuse me, for a few months as they do the build in. But here's the secret about these things. All of these organizations that you see on this thing, Data Bank, which is also running stuff for Meta and Google and things like that, a lot of these organizations have their own build teams that specialize in building data centers, especially the interior. So, like for example, like a union electrician in Maryland probably won't get a data center job to do the build in because they'll bring a specialty team in that builds data centers all throughout the country. Some of these folks, I was watching one documentary, the kid is 23 years old. He makes 30, I think it was $3,500 a week to travel the nation, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Montana, to basically do the electrical build-in for data centers, which is, building the foundation and the walls is nothing. It's easy. That happens quick. It's connecting all the servers inside, which is the big money thing. And those jobs just normally aren't created locally because they fly some people in. Then in the end, once the data center is built, how many jobs does it really, offer? 25 to 50 is some estimate because you'll have your security personnel, you'll have your engineers that have to watch it. But once these 500 square foot or even larger million square foot data centers are built, they need very little oversight when it comes to human beings because they sort of just kind of run on their own except for a handful of engineers. And then even that time you have people that fly in, specialists that will fly into each data center per area, per state, do their big check-ins, fix things that are really, really super broken, and then they'll leave. So really the amount of jobs that it creates is not adequate for the amount of money it costs in supply because these data centers, which are sucking up so much energy, are added to the supply costs of everyone in these 13 states to include us. And then that's what I'm going to do. And then besides the money, you have the environmental concerns. First of all, a data center that's running with air chilled. Oops, I almost fell on the ground. Air, my seat clicked out. You have these data centers that basically are using evaporated cooling. This is the old way that data centers are being built, and a lot of them are still being built because it's the cheaper way to do it. It basically shoots like a mist onto the servers that get incredibly hot. That evaporates the heat, and then you have these cooling units that keep cycling that air, pulling out the evaporation, and then cycling cold air in. If you see the top of data centers, let's see if it's on this picture. So if you see this top, if you can see the slide, you see this like fake little roof, almost like a hunchback or whatever. Inside this are just multiple like air conditioners, for lack of a better word, air condensers. Being next to a data center like this is probably creating anywhere between 80 to 90 decibels worth of sound, which is incredible. That would be the equivalent of standing directly next to a lawnmower. So there's your noise pollution. Loudoun County did the right thing when it came to taxation, but look how close all of these homes are. They did very, very poor. They were very, very poor at zoning this. So you have all these people whose home values are near worthless now. Some guy I saw on a documentary, him and his family sleep in the basement because the noise is so loud from the data centers that it keeps them up at night. Then you have the water usage, which goes kind of into this evaporated air thing. The water usage is phenomenal, and it strains our local systems, our drinking supply, drinking water, of which we're desperately losing in this country. It drains. our drinking supply and uses our drinking supply of water to go ahead and cool these things. You would think a lot of people would say, well, why don't they just siphon maybe out of a river or whatever? Because they don't want to do that because that water is dirty. And then you have to do a filtration process. And through the filtration process, you're basically just kicking out all the dirty stuff back into the river. You're taking fresh water. As it goes through the data center, it's picking up all kinds of different chemicals, some minerals and some metals, and then it's kicking it right back into the rivers. So that is horrible to our river supply. Then, if somebody challenges me on this, the next cycle of data center is immersion, which is you take a dielectric chemical and the servers are actually immersed in this. Now, they don't have coolers. They are silent like a library, and they pull very, very, very little energy. But that chemical is all PFAS, forever chemicals. It doesn't last forever. It doesn't do its job forever in the data center. So now, and again, when you have to replace those chemicals, those PFAS chemicals, which last forever, they can't be broken down in the environment. They can only be broken down through really extreme chemical processes, which never really happen. It ends up in our drinking water, it ends up in our bodies, it ends up in our food. So even that isn't safe. And then let's go into this last part about AI data centers. It's literally going to steal your job. So there's projections that 12 to 15 years from now, 1/3 of Americans will lose their job to AI. Already, artificial intelligence is replacing entry-level positions like in law clerks and billing, booking, accounting, things like that. People that would just go and do busy work. So that's why we have this, one of the reasons why we have this massive amount of new college graduates that aren't finding jobs because AI is literally taking it. So while it might seem great for this tax base, this is why I'm saying, while it might seem great for the tax base, how much do AI data centers really cost us in the end? They're not creating jobs, they're destroying our environment, they're sucking up our electricity and raising our bills. And lastly, they're taking jobs. They're preventing young people from graduating from college and finding jobs. Um, so that's that. I went through a lot of things going through my notes here. Should I take questions? Well, how's our time limit? 7:20. I'm thanks for all sticking with me. I really appreciate you. I hope I'm giving this in like a clear, concise way. Unanswered, oldest first. Are there hydraulic supply sources? Judith Gustafson, Jude, I don't know what you mean by hydraulic supply sources. I think you mean, if you mean hydraulic power, yes. That would be the Conowingo Dam, but that's really, really bad if that's what you mean. Having hydraulic with the Conowingo Dam, for example, I think she means hydropower, right?
See, like water resources, like dams, like water.
Hydropower. Yeah. Okay. So the thing with hydropower is look at Conowingo Dam, which is up in on the edge of Harford and Cecil counties. What pollutes the Chesapeake Bay so much is actually runoff from agriculture, the nitrogen and so on and so forth. When you have hydropowered hydro dam or hydroelectric dams like Conowingo Dam, over years and years and years, that sediment builds up behind that dam. And when you do have heavy rains or a big storm and you open up all the floodgates, it just floods the Chesapeake Bay with a bunch of nitrogen, lots of chemicals. And that's one of the biggest reasons, one of the big, if not the largest reason, why we have these algae blooms and all this pollution. There is another method of hydropower that works, but I don't know if it will work anywhere other than in Western Maryland, where you actually take a water source and you chug the water source up a mountain and you have a reservoir at the top. And when you do need power, you open that up, it comes back down to the bottom pole, and then you just keep doing it. And as it comes down, it's turning a generator and making power. People do that as backup power supplies for renewable energy. Basically, they have solar and they have wind. And if the solar is not working, if the sun isn't out, if it's been cloudy for a few days and there's no wind, they can just start cycling this water and make their own little like hydropower, which is actually quite safe. Gas delivery charges are much higher than gas supply. Yeah, so the electric delivery charge are catching up to this dynamic? What do you see as a trend for your solution? Okay, so this is literally only about electric, this thing, because you're right. What we have is we have really aging. Oh, sorry. The question is from Nike is gas delivery charges are much higher than gas supply. The electric delivery charges are catching up to this dynamic. What do you see as trends and your solutions? This is just about electric, about power, electricity, but our gas infrastructure is quite old. And now we're converting to a high pressure gas, which actually needs different pipes and a new build in. Ideally, myself, and the reason why the delivery charge is higher than supply is natural gas is cheap. It comes nearby, but the reason why the delivery on that circle is so high is because of all the infrastructure that BGE is building in for gas supply. In the end of the day, natural gas is very bad for the environment, very bad for the environment. And we should move away from that. It's also quite toxic to even have a gas stove in your house. But that is another town hall that we're going to be having shortly in the future. So I'll get that. The delivery charges are higher because BGE is building more infrastructure for, and so the supply. Oh, so the supply, I think I said that. I'll say it again though. Delivery charges are higher for gas because BGE is putting in a lot of infrastructure to do the build in for high pressure gas. Natural gas is cheap and plentiful. Unfortunately, with fracking, that destroys the environment and drinking water. So the supply, which is the gas itself, is low, where the delivery is high because of building an infrastructure. Okay, what is the solar energy impact on the supply? We have so much, Judith. What is the solar energy impact on the supply? We have so much renewable energy that is sitting dormant on our grid right now that is simply not plugged in to PJM's infrastructure because PJM has an archaic way of basically the approval process to allow renewable energy to be plugged in. In some states, there's also rules that for every renewable energy source, you have to have a backup fossil fuel source or nuclear source or hydro source to back it up because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. But we are making just so much progress in microgrids and battery storage that shouldn't even really be a problem. Okay, so let's talk about, let me just take one more and then we're going to talk about all the solutions. Alex Chuprin, is the energy demand predicted demand or an actual demand now because none of the data centers have been built yet? Yo, Alex, that is a great question. Let me tell you how they're really, really messing with us, the ratepayers, on that. So the way that the companies do it, like Meta and stuff like that, is they have to do proposals like in different states. So let's use this example. Let's say Meta makes an LLC, okay, like a limited liability corporation. So they're going to go ahead and try to compete between each county, Baltimore County, Frederick, or whatever, to see who's going to give them the cheapest amount of taxes. So they could start, let's say there's 24 jurisdictions in Maryland. Let's say Meta starts 24 different LLCs. They will go ahead and put a proposal into each county trying to see what county will go ahead and give them the lowest rate. When PJM predicts the cost of supply at the auction, it's based off of a predictive model, not what exists now, but what could exist in the future. So all 20, even though one data center is going to be built in Maryland, but 24 proposals have been put in for that one data center, PJM actually looks at those 24 as projected energy, energy eaters, and will literally raise our supply rates in the auction based off of that. It is a horrible problem. You have so many folks in Congress who are trying to pass these laws to go ahead and close this LLC loophole. So it's very obvious to PJM who is literally requesting this data center, if it's the same data center. But if you look at a list, and I don't have that up on my screen here, but if you look at a list of all the projected data centers right now in the United States, this is ridiculous. And every region kind of works the same way. We're in PJMs, but there's other regions. Texas is a region. If you look at all the regions, they all project their power usage the same way. If you look at every proposed data center in America, it uses more power than what the United States actually produces. Because the great majority of data centers that are proposed are phantom data centers that will never, ever be built. So the system on PJM, like as a state legislature, even as the state of Maryland, the best thing we can do with PJM is send strongly worded letters and basically ask them to go ahead and fix this process, of which they know exists, but they're so archaic, everything is so slow. So let's talk about what we can do on a state level, or what the politicians should do to go ahead and protect us, the ratepayers. Well, the very first thing that I want to focus on is this bill that Bill Ferguson is going to introduce on Friday, the bill that you and I pushed him into introducing, to basically take a deeper look at these supplemental projects that BGE is putting in, and basically stripping away from the state law that says BGE is allowed to just ultimately approve their own projects as long as the line runs underground under existing conduits or existing lines, where existing lines are. We should make every single project BGE does from here on out considered a new project. So that would bring a lot more oversight, environmental oversight, right-of-way oversight into the PSC. Another thing that should literally immediately happen is we should go ahead and the General Assembly should stop this multi-year rate plan. The multi-year rate plan only benefits utility companies. Only benefits utility companies. And you can see how BGE has abused the multi-year rate plan by using this federal supplemental loophole. So it's very clear BGE had an opportunity. They didn't use that opportunity in a good fashion to protect the ratepayer while still doing their new build-ins. So they should lose the privilege of being able to charge us, the ratepayers, 3 years in advance.
Our legislators to do.
Linda Pierce. Okay, Linda Pierce. This is what we need to ask our legislators to do. Number one, we have to ask them to go ahead and stop the supplemental loophole by making existing underground work part of the PSC's purview for the approval process. Number two, we have to ask our legislators to stop the multi-year rate plan. And number three, we have to have local governments like the city council and county councils, municipalities, to actually hold the utility companies responsible and accountable for what their project is going to be before they issue any right-of-way or passages or give them any zoning to go ahead and tear up roads and land. Basically, BGE just has to prove that the project is legitimately important to continue power usage or having power secure in Maryland. And the last thing that I have here is non-wire alternatives, NWAs. Basically, you can use this is the fourth and final thing. BGE can use software and different type of controls without replacing wire that can actually benefit the grid or make sure that the power is going through, it's not getting too hot, based off of calculations and software rather than actually replacing the hardware. I know a lot of this stuff is a little complicated, but everyone is going to get a follow-up email to this with these things that we're requesting and asking you to basically sign a petition asking that the legislatures, before this session ends, will introduce these things to go ahead and protect ratepayers in the future. These are things that the Office of the People's Counsel have been asking for years, and for years the General Assembly and the politicians have either been ignoring it, or they don't understand how the grid works, or don't understand how we got here. But these four things are huge. And the fifth and final thing, which is separate, is there's an organization out there called Baltimore Public Power, who's now putting a pledge through asking that politicians pledge not to take money from utility companies, to include BGE. Baltimore Public Power is an important thing because 55 million people in this country have public power. What public power means is this: that you and I, the ratepayer, aren't relying on a corporation that has to make a profit. A corporation that is relying on their shareholders, have to make their shareholders happy by making large profits each year. A public power model means that you and I, the ratepayer, own it. So what gets built is only the necessity of what needs to get built. What gets charged is only the necessity of what needs to be charged to the ratepayer, and there is no profit. It's basically a nonprofit thing. People have done this in different ways across the country. They've had co-ops. They've had co-ops where you and I, the ratepayer, will own it, and we get to vote on who's going to run the public power. They also have things where just city governments or state governments run public power. And I want to show you this video. So this is from Cleveland Public Power. So Cleveland has their own power. The people of Cleveland own this power. And this news shot from, I don't know when this was, just a year ago, just made me wild. This is what public power gets you.
Cleveland Public Power customers, get ready. You got to pay more for your electric bill.
Oh, yeah. Ugh. Last night, Cleveland City Council approved the first rate increase since 1983. Wow. Our Kaitor K is live at CPP with all the details you need to know. Kaitor, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So for context, Cleveland Public Power provides service for about 73,000 customers, with the average customer using about 500 kilowatt hours a month. Right now, the average customer pays just under $75 a month in the winter. With the approved rate increase, customers' monthly bills would increase $4.85 next year and an additional $3.45 in 2026. So in the winter months, the average bill will be going from about $75 to $83, and in the summer, you're looking at a jump from roughly $81 to $91 by 2026. And these bills include electricity charge, power supply recovery, and a kilowatt hour tax. CPP says the rate increase is to help them address rising costs and infrastructure improvements. Now, Cleveland Public Power claims to have some of the lowest rates in the state, with their residential rates they claim are cheaper than Cincinnati, Columbus, Akron, and Dayton.
At the end of the day, what we should really move to is we should really push forward studies on having real conversations about moving towards a public power where everyone in Maryland actually owns the grid and we own the utility company itself. It would, over time, it would greatly reduce our rates and would also strengthen our grid. And it could also implement more options like microgrids, renewable energies, and battery storage if we get to control how the future looks in Maryland. So next, let me move up to more recent things. What time is it? 7:40. Yeah, so I'm going to go, can we present a stable solution for the LLC proposal issue? Can we present a Morgan? No, I can't do that. That was a long time ago. Can we present a
Turn your screen off.
I'm going to do this first. Okay. So, Morgan Carroll, you mentioned documentaries about this a few times. Eddie, oh yeah. All right, Morgan, I'll put in. Do we have everyone's email address?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll email you some documentaries that I think are really amazing. Some of them go really deep into the weeds about stuff, but a lot of them are really local because PJM is dealing with this issue more than anywhere else in the country. So yeah, I'll put some documentaries in an email. I'll probably even put some stuff on the website, makegoodchange.com. Did we not have a public utility decades ago? BGE was a public utility ... I don't know. We might have, not in my lifetime, not that I can remember. BGE was always a for-profit company. It was just a private company before Exelon purchased it. I mean, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I haven't really gone back that far. I'm looking to the future, not so much to the past. Morgan Carroll, can we present a stable solution for the LLC proposal issue you mentioned, or does it have to be a federal since we are part of a 13-state collective? Hey, Morgan, that's a really good idea. So we can do LLC. We can close the LLC gaps and the loopholes here in the state on the state level. But really, a lot of this stuff when it comes to PJM and requesting things would be a federal law. But yes, the state can go ahead and pass a law that would close the LLC loophole so we can actually see who owns stuff. It would also help in housing and things like that. If people can go online and see an LLC who actually owns it, like is an out-of-state developer when it comes to housing, is it Meta when it comes to a data center, would be perfect. And I do actually believe that a bill like that gets introduced in the General Assembly. I don't know why it's not passed. It should have been passed about 15 years ago. Mariah Cameron. I'm an organizer who's conducted effective email letter campaigns in New York. I've lived in where are like minds gathering to write and activate our neighbors. Yeah, public power. Mariah, just Google Baltimore Public Power. You'll love that group. They're really amazing people. They've been working on it for years. And like every good cause, they could always use more help. Bill Ferguson's bill. So this is Morgan Carroll. Bill Ferguson's bill feels incredibly performative based on the pressure he's feeling from your campaign and the support you are receiving from people like us. But crossover is just 2.5 weeks away, and it has to get through rules first. Do you really see this bill getting out of the Maryland General Assembly this year? And honestly, look, okay, honest to God, if it was just a regular bill, no. But Bill Ferguson's the Senate president, and he's trying to show that he is all powerful and super amazing. We saw what he did with redistricting, tapping on the other 46 senators to tell them to be quiet so it didn't come up for a debate or a vote on the Senate floor. I can see him tapping the other senators to make sure this bill passes so he can get the kudos. Unfortunately, it backfired in his face. And Bill, if you're watching, the entire city of Baltimore realizes that you made this move based off the video. But here's the point. You shouldn't have to wait to somebody, to a challenger or whatever, makes a video for you to do the right thing. A bill like this should have been passed years ago. It would have saved us, the ratepayers, hundreds of dollars over this time. Benjamin Polson. How can we empower and supplement end users to have solar and battery power to offset all of this? Well, that's another thing is Empower Maryland, which is actually up for possibly on the chopping block this year, where you get rebates for making your home more efficient if you add electrical-based things. And there's also other things that we can go ahead and give out tax credits for when it comes to solar. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to rush through as quickly as possible so we still have enough time. I don't know if I answered that question. I actually forgot what it was. PFAS stays in the environment for around 100 years. Sorry, guys, I'm going so quick because I'm trying to get to everybody's questions. So Judith Gustafson, by the way, I love that last name still. PFAS stays in the environment for around 100 years. The effects of PFAS exposure in concentrated levels include thyroid dysfunction, reproductive issues, and cancer. 100%, Judith. That's why PFAS is really bad. Unfortunately, so another side little bar, the EPA under the Trump administration has allowed the use of PFAS chemicals once again for agriculture. One of the very important bills I would like to pass in the General Assembly is not allowing agriculture to use PFAS in the state of Maryland because it gets into our water supply. Nick Kostrofan, Nike. Okay. There's already a lot of research and best practice recommendations to reduce the environmental impact, e.g. recycled water instead of fresh water. How can we get national legislation to create national standards? State level is insufficient because it's causing a race to the bottom state body. Well, look, you can actually stop the race to the bottom county by having a statewide law. By the way, I hope someone from the governor's office is listening. You should really pass a statewide law that dictates how data centers are built, that they have to be using X amount of renewable energy to work, that they have to pay their fair share to be put on the grid, that they can't use PFAS chemicals, that they can't, they have to be built in a way that doesn't take away from our drinking supply, and that they're all taxed equally. When you have Frederick County and Carroll County and PG County all fighting over each other for different rates, and you give all the power to Meta and take all the power away from legislators, you take all the power away from the people. So why not make it a broad state legislation? This is how we treat every single data center in the state. Then it's just up to the jurisdictions for zoning and how they're going to build them. Then all that tax revenue, some of it, most of it will stay in the local jurisdiction, and the rest of it will go to the state to be dispersed into increasing our renewable energy supply, to getting on the grid, having microgrids, battery storage, maybe even buying our own utility company. As far as having federal regulations on it, man, going to Congress is probably like banging your head against the wall. In Congress, good laws that have a 60% chance, I think this is the right numbers, laws that have a 60% approval or greater of working people in this country, basically people love it, have less than a 30% chance of getting passed. Right now, we're almost at 80%. 80% of Americans want Medicare for all. Do you think that's ever going to get through Congress? So I would focus on staying local. Get your state leaders and your city council leaders to work for you. That's what MAG is doing for the past 10 years. MAG has been focusing on local elections. They're trying to win from the bottom up, and maybe the Democratic Party should do so too. All right, so Morgan Carroll. So, well, lots of questions, Morgan. Maybe I should just give you a call and get have a coffee. So how do you respond when other elected officials say we can't afford renewable energy because we are already being wrung dry by supplemental projects that attempt to update our infrastructure for renewable sources? Renewable energy, I wish I had this chart to show you. Renewable energy is the cheapest energy we can use. Solar, wind have dramatically come down in price. You know what's expensive? Expensive is coal. Actually, building nuclear power plants, building new reactors is very expensive. But when it comes to renewable energy, it is dirt cheap. The reason why we don't have this infrastructure built in for renewable energy in the entire country is because utility companies can't make money off of it. All right, so Nike, so OPC, yeah, you know me, who advocate for and protect ratepayers, write very well-researched letters to PSC, but PSC ignores practically everything OPC say. How can we strengthen our OPC's authority? First of all, they did for years, like forever. They have been underfunded and understaffed. That recently changed where they got more funding and more staff. I definitely OPC needs more oversight. I wish, oh wait, is this still shared over here? Oh man, guys, if you want to see something crazy, go to the public commission. Sorry, I'm so tired. The PSC, the Public Services Commission. So Google Public Services Commission Maryland, bring up their website. And then go, Office of the People's Council, Maryland, and bring up that website. Look how well funded the PSC is compared to the OPC. Just look at those. That tells you right there how the politicians feel about ratepayers versus actually holding the utility companies accountable. So Michael Helm, absolutely, you cannot make money on renewable energy without taxpayer money. It's not affordable. What? Renewable energy? Oh, okay, gotcha, Mike. Okay, renewable energy is the cheapest way. It's the future. It's what we'll do.
It's not. He's arguing with you.
Okay, Mike, prove it, because all the studies show that you're wrong. No offense, buddy. I'm not. I don't know how to answer that. It's just every study that's out there is like renewable energy is the way to go. So BGE only reports on these supplemental projects after they are finished and ready to be paid for them. Yeah. Shamia was like, BGE only reports on these supplemental projects after they are finished and ready to be paid for them. They report all their projects and not always in a very forthcoming way, because they'll start lots of projects. Once BGE starts a project, they have their fingers in it, which gives them the ability to go to courts later if the state tries to stop it and say, oh, we already started this. We have so much money invested. So the project may start off with, okay, it's going to be $100 million or whatever. And then, like you see with Baltimore Peninsula, it could just exaggerate up to $500 million. The thing is, though, with supplemental projects, in the end of the day, every project needs oversight by the elected people. The people, we elect people to go represent us. They go ahead and choose the PSC members. Every single project, a for-profit, a publicly traded company should have oversight. Colin Hobby, the problem is the Public Service Commission has never had the public's interest. I agree with you, Colin. So Colin Hobby says the problem is the Public Service Commission has never had the public's interest at heart. How can we rectify the commission to be equitable to the public? I haven't figured that one out yet. I'm going to be honest with you. But you know what? I'll have an answer for you by Friday. And then last question is, so how do the regulations impact the cost? See, considering numerous companies are no longer providing services. I don't understand what Michael's saying. Michael. I want to answer this. So how do the regulations impact the cost? The regulations on what? If you're still here, Michael, can you go ahead and follow that up? So how do the regulations on what impact the cost, considering numerous companies are no longer providing services? Oh, he's gone? All right. Sorry, Michael Hallam. I was really trying to answer that. Well, look, we've got 53 people online. No more questions left. Is that right? Man, look what we did together. First of all, we literally may actually pass meaningful legislation that's been asked for years, first of all. Right? I know. It's all us. It's all, remember, it is not me. There's proof in the pudding. That video of the Baltimore Peninsula is proof in the pudding. It is not me. That's 200,000 views, like 9,000 likes, all the shares. Honestly, we make good change. It's a shame that politicians have to be threatened in an election year to do stuff. But like, in the end of the day, it works, right? Like, it's working, this is it. We might be able to we have a couple more weeks left to make some really, really good change before the end of this, before the election on June 23rd, but that's awesome. If you want to continue to help make good change, we are going door to door. We make phone calls every day. If you don't volunteer with us yet, we have a ton of volunteers. We all have fun. We're having a huge pizza and party and all that kind of stuff at ministry coming up soon. I'm not going to give the details for our volunteers. So we always have a party. We try to do it once a month with all the volunteers. It's a great way to meet people, great way to get out and do good stuff in your community. And we do a lot of good stuff. I think right now, like half of the 311 calls in Baltimore is from our volunteers. But anyway, yeah. So it's in the thing. If you want to sign up to volunteer, you go to makegoodchange.com and hit volunteer. If you would like, obviously, I don't take any corporate money. This thing right here wasn't a political thing. Like, it wasn't about me versus Bill. You're the judge of that. But if you do like me, if you want to support us, we need to send out mailers and so on and so forth. Bill Ferguson has $2 million. We have you, we have each other. So even like $5, $10, $27 goes far. So you can also donate at makegoodchange.com. If you have any advice on stuff that you would like to talk about, you can always email us. The email's in the chat, ar@bobbyforbemore.com. That's how I get suggestions on how to do stuff. The last town hall we did, where we only had like 30 people, said we should do an energy one, and we had 500 people sign up for this one. So, I think all in total, 700 something. It was like 700 signups, but we can only accommodate 500, or else I have to pay Google. I have to pay Google a lot more money to do more than 500 videos at the time. But anyway, I'm rambling now. I love you all. Let's go out there, do good, be kind to each other, be kind to yourself. This is how we make good change. Good night.